I'm Mike Thomas. I first encountered the Friends, if that's the right word, when I was fundraising manager here from 1991 to 97. So that was about 6-7 years. After I finished here, I then became more involved with the Friends, but doing what I could when I could.
I'm Liz. I was chairman of the Friends for the last 5 to 6 years before we closed it down. I've been involved with Willen now for about 8 years altogether.
I'm Ursula Doncaster. I've always supported Willen from when it started, but only in a donation way. And then when I retired, I took over the chairmanship of the coffee shop in Newport Pagnell that gives all its profits to Willen. And Chris suggested that I should join the Friends, so I've been on with the Friends for 15 years and still involved with the coffee shop. And we have given you, I know it's only a little coffee shop, but we've given you over £250,000.
The Friends at Willen are a group of people that started to raise funds to originally buy the farmhouse. They bought the farmhouse, which was then turned into the hospice, which opened in January 1981. They then decided in April 1982 that they would form a proper charity and became a registered charity. And in that time, until it closed down last year, it's raised £2.2 million in various different ways. At the beginning, not only were they fundraisers, but they also organised all the non-medical staff. So they were responsible for training people that came in and made the tea and did the laundry and did the cleaning and the gardening and anything else. So all the volunteer workers were organised by the Friends. We were at that time called the Friends of...
it was the League of Friends.
The League of Friends.
The League of Friends originally.
Of Our Lady...
Our Lady, the hospice
St.
originally,
John.
the hospice of Our Lady in St. John.
Yeah. And then we changed to the Friends of Willen Hospice around 1980, I believe.
Around that time.
Sorry, 1990.
90.
Yeah. And we then became purely fundraisers. So we've done lots of different things over the years. Some stupid, some fun, good fun, some hard work.
I think it was probably about that time then, wasn't it, that the hospice appointed its own volunteer coordinator.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that was Jenny Royal all those years back. But I was appointed as the hospice's first fundraising manager in 1991, primarily to launch an appeal to build the first extension, which was now the St John Reed Unit. I think it's still named that. It's the 2-storey building above the daycare centre. And Jenny Royal then, I remember, was the volunteer coordinator. So she must have, I think the hospice must have taken on that role in an official capacity, because then Jenny recruited volunteers and they were deployed in different parts of the hospice, in the kitchen, in the laundry, all different places.
I believe they had their own cook, but things
Kate.
They had their own cook, but like tea, afternoon tea and
the
volunteers.
volunteers used to serve the teas, and in fact I think they used to serve the meals as well, but they were prepared in the kitchen by hospice catering staff.
One of the family members was Bet Morgan, and the barn was known as Bet's Barn. And she did, with other volunteers, all the sorting of donations that came in before we had the shops. And I'm trying to think who else was with her.
I don't know, too long before my time.
Yes, I can't remember her name, but there was another lady. In fact, there were 2 ladies I think lived in Olney who helped. Because that's when I actually started my connection with the hospice as a volunteer. I'd been made redundant from a job, and just found myself looking, with spare time, and found myself doing some voluntary work for the hospice. And in fact, I remember in Betts Barn, I used to drive the little van around delivering to what then were just the 2 shops, one in Bletchley and one in Stony Stratford.
Wasn't Philip one of the first?
Philip Smith?
He used to drive the van as well.
He may have, but I didn't really get involved, much contact with Philip until much later. Yeah, much later. So we had a little white van, pretty old thing, and I remember, Betts Barn, all the clothes were sorted and the donations and the bric-a-brac and what have you, and then they were made up for deliveries to the 2 shops, and that was one of the jobs I did, help sorting. And
I don't know how it evolved, but the shop within the hospice was run by the Friends and by one person in particular, Joan Sidebottom, and her husband Brian was responsible for changing over all the collecting pots all around the Milton Keynes district, and it was only when they retired that the rest of the Friends got involved with changing over. In fact,
I took that over from Brian,
Yes.
and probably for a couple of years, I think, probably. And I can't remember, I must have had, a couple of 300 tins out in the community, and used to allocate, for different people to arrange the collection and emptying and, leaving them with the empty tins again. And some of those tins really filled up so quickly.
They did. And still do.
They're still, right.
I'm not as involved with changing.
No.
The post office at Woburn used to fill 3 tins every 3 weeks.
That's right, I remember that one. Yeah, there was one in Woburn.
The Friends used to attend most of the events that were running within the area, the carnivals, the fetes. We would go to all of those. We'd have a stall, whether it be a tombola or something like that. We did that for many years, and in fact, when I first joined, we were really quite heavily involved. But as the hospice evolved, they became able to do a lot of the functions of the Friends.
And they duplicated some of them.
Some of them.
So we stepped back a bit.
So that's when we started to step back. For example, bucket collections, the hospice never did any.
No, we used
the Friends used to do all
supermarkets.
All the supermarkets. We were very heavily involved within the community. And
we did door-to-doors.
Yes,
we did.
Yeah.
High street collections.
And we had quite a big team at that point of volunteers.
We'd got about 100 registered Friends that
would
we
help
could
if we had
call.
some.
A lot of them were elderly and said, sorry, I can't, but we'll put donation in. But for bucket collections and things like that.
The actual committee itself was probably a nucleus of 8 to 10 people.
Yeah.
Was never more than 10 people on the committee. But the people that volunteered all had some sort of connection with the hospice, either they'd had someone in there and they saw you at a fete or something and said, what can we do to help? You said, do you want to join the committee? Oh, no. The usual story. But I'm happy to come and do an hour. So we'd take their phone number or their email address, and when we were doing something near where they lived, we'd say, right, we're in Newport Pagnell on such a day, do you want to come and do an hour? Or we need somebody to do this, and they would, most of them, we could set up a rota.
Very rarely had a problem filling our rotas. So people were really enthusiastic.
People moved away from Newport, the area, but they still paid their subscription to the Friends.
We
We had people in Reading, in Wales,
some in Scotland. They still paid their annual fee every year. Chris was responsible for doing the newsletter. We used to do 3 a year, 4 a year.
Yeah.
And it was just basically what was happening, what dates were coming, how much money we'd made, any pictures we could rake up and put in there just to make it a bit more interesting.
I remember when I first started in the fundraising role, the main fundraising was actually done by, do you remember Peter Vischer?
Yes.
The Swiss.
The tannery man.
I don't know what
They're of that family.
but I remember he was one of the, basically a volunteer fundraiser for the hospice. He might have been on a committee, I don't know, whether he was actually one of the trustees.
There was more than one committee at the beginning.
Right, okay.
There was an offshoot. I can't remember what they called themselves, but they did raise money for the hospice.
Because I know, thinking back, when I was appointed, there was a certain amount of, how can we say, reaction. They said, well, why do we need to pay somebody to fundraise? Because we've got a committee. And of course, you know, that was at the time when it was realised that the hospice needed to expand. And that was the first expansion. But yes, but I think that's, you know, that soon died down a bit, you know, that because part of my role, apart from managing an appeal to raise £1 million, was actually a liaison role with the Friends. So I had regular meetings so that apart from anything else we could develop a relationship, because I was, well, I'd been a volunteer at the hospice, but then obviously I was a member of staff, to continue a dialogue and you know, generate a relationship with the Friends, and partly to assist if the hospice could assist the Friends in any way, or indeed if the Friends could assist the hospice in any way. So it was a mutual situation, and I had regular meetings so that we could explain to, you know, discuss events that were being held, particularly so we could try and avoid any duplication.
Well, we've always had quite close liaisons with the
Chris
fundraisers.
Ives was the,
Sorry?
especially when Chris Ives was the CEO.
Yes, yeah.
He was brilliant.
Yeah,
Absolutely brilliant with Friends.
Yeah.
But we've always had close ties with the fundraising department.
Yes, we have.
Yeah.
Yes.
They've always come to our meetings
Yes.
when they could.
And that's the situation that, you know, existed when I was working here.
How long did you do that role for, Mike?
6-7 years.
So you all mentioned earlier there was a point where I guess things shifted a little bit, because I guess as the hospice grew and the fundraising team grew. When was that roughly? Do you remember when you sort of started to...
Well, when I started, I was one of one. And in fact, really, I was one of one for most of that time. There was one of the nurses who provided help on a part-time basis. But my main role was to, as I say, to manage an appeal to raise the £1 million to build the first extension. I think a lot of that was, you know, it was a lot of administrative work of that, as well as engaging with the public. But yeah, I think that probably. Just trying to think back. I was here from, you know, employed between 1991 and 97. So forgive me for my memories. That was 30 years ago now.
I think it was after the millennium that Willen itself started to develop its own
serious
teams.
Fundraising. Seriously.
I'm only summarising this, but the reason for that would have been that the Friends could only do so much, because we were on the whole a team of people that in many cases had other jobs, so we could only provide certain hours, and that's when it became necessary for Mike's role to be expanded.
That's when we got events and
that's right, yes, because I mean, it's starting to come back to me more now, because I remember I mean, remember the sunflowers, for example. That was, once I'd got well into the appeal, I found myself starting to get involved in more fundraising events rather than applying for charitable trusts and various other things. I know that I had a lot of support, and I know a lot of the friends would have been involved in distributing the sunflowers. That was the first time that the sunflower had become a symbol of the hospice movement. And that raised a lot of money as well. So, but again, it was a question of getting support from friends and volunteers to help distribute the trays of sunflowers, collect the money in, count the money. So,
the modern, I call them modern events, the Midnight Moo, the Santa Dash, none of those existed through the Friends.
No.
And to organise events like that, you needed an events team. The only one that historically I've been involved with, and it goes back further, is the Ascot event, which was already rolling when I joined. And it was once the fundraising team started and they began to be able to concentrate on...
That was one of their first big things.
That was one of their first big things. They could concentrate on things that we couldn't get involved with because...
It was too big.
Yeah, and I mean, they would be on my resources as an individual as well.
Yes.
So, I mean, from what I know, I mean, the hospice has expanded over the years, and of course that's meant that the fundraising effort had to be increased. So,
I think the biggest things we ever did were things like barn dances, hog roasts,
quizzes,
yeah.
Auctions.
Auctions, the yearly auction at the Sherrington pub.
Oh yeah, Philip Smith. Oh, gosh, yes.
He was brilliant to the Friends.
Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, we've had massive supporters over the years.
Yes.
I suppose then it became more difficult to explain what is the difference between the Friends and what is the difference between the hospice fundraisers. And
we just used to say, they get paid, we don't.
And I think then it became necessary to look at how things work. And you're still involved.
Yeah.
You're still involved. I'm sure. Will you do your bits through the Rotary?
Yeah. I mean, in fact, just last evening, my Rotary Club in Wolverton, Stony Stratford, donated £1,000 from our Christmas collection to Nikki. Nikki came along to receive a cheque.
I came up here a fortnight ago, gave Nikki a cheque for £4,000 from the coffee shop. I'm just proud of having been a member of the Friends of Willen.
Yeah.
That is really, to me, no particular event. I just felt I was a friend of Willen, and I was proud of that.
Yeah, I'm proud of being a supporter of Willen. Although sometimes you regretted it when you were walking the carnival in the rain.
I was lucky. I was
the bucket half full of water.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed meeting a lot of people and listening to the stories that they give of the wonderful care that comes from Willen.
Yes.
And sometimes you get a negative person and you try and turn it round. And
not too many though.
Not too many, but hopefully the ones that you do get, you can turn around and get them to see it from a different point of view. And everybody that I know that has had someone in the hospice has got nothing but praise for the staff, the building, the whole thing. And that's what I'm proud to have been involved in and still involved in.
I don't know whether I could actually put a finger on proudest moment with specific reference to the Friends, although obviously we've had the association with the Friends. I suppose my involvement with the hospice has started obviously as a volunteer because I was made redundant from a particular job, and then did that for a period of time. I was then appointed to as the fundraising manager, and after that I then went on to become more involved with the Friends. And then, as Andrew says, taking over with collecting tins, for example, and organising that. But I suppose, really, I have to say, my proudest moment, I think, was when we raised £1 million for the first extension. That has to be. I mean, I had a tremendous feeling of satisfaction in being able to do that, and carrying on, I mean, through Rotary, for example. I know it's not directly involved with the Friends, but
Still very important.
one of our members' wives died in the hospice, and he was moved to do something for the hospice. So he approached members of the Rotary Club and said, look, come on, we need to do something. So we actually funded the minibus, the ambulance that you now have. We continue to support the hospice through Christmas collections and what have you. So.
But first of all, what Liz said about meeting friends and the enjoyment that I've had over the last 11 years has been absolutely fantastic. But I retired nearly 12 years ago to look after my wife who had cancer. And unfortunately, my wife needed Willen Hospice. And they were absolutely brilliant. And after my wife passed away, I was looking for something to do. I looked at Rotary.
Yeah, I remember.
And I looked at Willen. And Willen fairly soon had me involved in many different things. One included the Friends. So what did I want to do? I wanted to give back to Willen what they had given to my wife, and I know how much she appreciated it. And then over recent years my philosophy has slightly changed. I wanted people in the same situation as my wife to get the same treatment that she got. And that is why I stuck with the Friends, and that is why I've stuck with fundraising now that the Friends is no more. But I must say what Liz has said, the Friends. We are true friends of Willen, and we've had some laughs, haven't we?
And we're friends of each other.
Yes.
And it's been a brilliant experience, but and that is my reason for doing what I do. Both my children were in their early 20s when their mum passed away, and my daughter wanted help, and she received counselling through the hospice. And we've got to bear in mind, this is 11 years ago now. Whenever I bump into the person that counselled my daughter, she asks, "How is Lucia?" Which is absolutely brilliant. I appreciate that. So
Had to close the Friends. One of the deciding factors was we were getting quite low on committee members, which meant the ones that were active were doing an awful lot of the donkey work, setting up the gazebo and loading the car up with tables and chairs and things to go to events, which is not an easy job, is it, Andrew?
No.
We were increasingly getting older. I was probably one of the youngest members.
You were?
I was, yes. And unfortunately, our treasurer, who had been our treasurer for about 15 years, became very ill. She actually had cancer and died in the hospice. And we couldn't get anybody who would replace Pat. In fact, she was irreplaceable because none of us knew how much work she actually did.
No. Yeah.
She was a very private person, and she just used to get on with it and do it. And we just did not know what she did.
No.
We had no idea how much work she was covering.
I know. I remember her walking up the high street to Barclays Bank with a shopping trolley or two full of copper from the collecting tin.
Well, I know how heavy it was because I then had to take that over.
Yeah.
So I then became treasurer as well as chairman, which technically you're not supposed to do, but we couldn't find anybody else. We decided to close it, and then COVID happened. So it actually took us 18 months longer than it should have done to close it down, because we had to get all the tins in and that. But we collected another 12 grand in that 18 months. So, you know, it didn't do us any harm.
I think the other thing was that the hospice itself was more in a position to take over everything that we did.
Yeah. The Friends had done its job.
Over the last 18 months, mainly through Liz, we transferred all the collecting pots over to the hospice so that they wouldn't lose out in any way. The hospice was, as I say, more events evolved, and they were able to do
more than we could.
So that's how the decision came about. Well, I'm very much involved with the hospice, even though the Friends have wound up. I was very much a gopher for the Friends, and I'm pretty well that now.
For fundraising.
I think if you spoke to any of the events or the community team, if they're stuck, they'll give me a phone call, and if I'm free, I'll do it. What do I do at the moment? I've probably done way in excess of 100 sessions at the vaccination centre. In the early days we didn't have very many volunteers, but they put out a plea, and fortunately we've got more people doing that now. Pretty well every event, Ascot, the Santa Dash, that's evolved to having Santa's Grotto. Ho ho ho, that's me. Then Nikki in her wisdom builds a float,
which we contributed to.
Which the Friends, one of our last payments, we gave money for the float so that it could be lit up and illuminated, and it does.
And the sound system.
And the sound system, it looks pretty good. So even the Friends got involved in that. So you name it. Oh, I'm an ambassador. I forgot about that. So I might go to check presentations and things like that. So God knows how I ever managed to work. I don't know.
I suppose really my involvement with the Friends now is non-existent, I should say, to be perfectly honest. Directly anyway, when I was, knew about this event today, I thought, gosh, well, yes, I can remember certain things. I can remember certain things going back to my early involvement with the hospice. But I suppose really my main involvement now, if you like, is through my Rotary Club and our Christmas collections and what have you. So that's really the only thing I can say that I have current involvement. I say current.
Yeah, I get dragged back. My involvement with the hospice, where to start? I work in one of the charity shops 3 hours a week. I do bucket collecting for fundraising. I go on stalls at things like Santa Dash. I've helped over the years with the Move Walk. I'm currently about to do some retraining for bereavement counselling. And again, like Andrew, if Nikki needs somebody, she can call me and say, can you do such and such, and if I can, I will. I've done the vaccination centre, so still wear my sweatshirt quite often. With pride.
Well, I've done vaccination centres during the COVID. I'm still involved with the coffee shop. Although I am giving up the chairmanship at the end of this month. Having done it for 15 years, I thought, I'm not getting any younger and we could do with some new ideas. But I'm still going to be involved. I'm not going to do a regular day like I've done since 2002. I'm going to fill in where there's people are off sick or they haven't got enough on their team. So I'm going to fill in for Thursdays and Fridays. And any other day if they need me. But, you know, I don't know whether I'm too old now to help in the shop.
No, you can still help in the shop.
I don't know if I've been sure though.
I don't know. I don't think they ask anybody's age. If you're willing to work, they'll love you.
I'd like to worry about that.
I think you're talking to 4 people here.
Yeah.
And
Committed to Willen.
committed to Willen, but there's been so many more.
Mm.
You know, in the 10 years that I've been involved, there's been many. Over the 40 years, there's probably been thousands.
Yeah.
Mm.
And, you know, one of the easiest things in helping Willen is the number of people that have a bad thing to say is minimal.
Mm.
So it's an easy thing to do.
You never know when you need it.
That's exactly what I was just going to say. Sorry, you take the words out of my mouth.
Yes. And knowing people who have been through Willen, you know, if it happens to me, that's where I want to be.
Mm. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I support Willen because, like you, I want it to be there should I need it. But it is very, very rewarding.
Mm.
And you can go home feeling that you've done something really good. Whether you've raised a £5 or 50 quid, it doesn't really matter. Talking of which, when that man gave me £50 at the station, I kissed him. It was in Blue Week and he came up, he walked past me and he turned around and he came back and he opened his wallet and he went, here, my gran was in there. I said, £50 no.
Well, there's been some tremendous stories here. Yeah, you know, it's fun. As well as giving,
Yeah.
Yes.
you know, we've had laughs along the way.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it is exactly what you said though, Ursula. It needs to be there for people that need it.
Yeah.